ですか?
Okay, it's recording. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So we just got back from Godzilla Minus One. We all have our thoughts on it. I'm Golden. Who the hell are you?
Oh, I'm
It's
Simmons.
me, Dickard T. Shut up! It's me, Dickard T.
You are Dickard T, a funny internet video person. Who are you? Anime
never done that.
person.
Oh, I'm Simmons. I am otherwise known as Some Friend.
Okay, and who are you, Travis Touchdown?
I'm your worst nightmare, baby.
All right.
I'm scary. I'm what the?
Go ahead. You're scary.
I'm scary. The only place you'd recognize me from is from his male pregnancy monster movie where I did the Kamen Rider joke.
So, Golden, what did you think of Godzilla Minus One?
I really liked it. I think that the emotional core that it brings is something we have not seen in a very long time with the Godzilla series. Not to say that it hasn't happened before, but the degree to which this film has characters that you care about, it's very unique and interesting and cool. I think the narrative is a little conventional, but it does everything it does so well. It's thrilling, it's emotional, it's got amazing music. Godzilla is scary again. It's really cool. What did you think of it?
So scary, what did you think of Godzilla Minus One?
He asked you a question and you didn't respond.
No.
Scary, what did you think of Godzilla
your
Minus
turn.
One?
It's probably my new favorite Godzilla movie, like of all time. Every single moment of it, I was like glued to the screen. There are some moments where the theater just went dead silent and you could hear like a spider like sneeze.
So, Simmons, what did you think of Godzilla Minus One?
So to preface, I am not well versed in the Godzilla franchise, like you three probably are. However, this is probably one of my all-time favorite movies, just from storytelling and impact and connections that I established with the movie, just from personal life experiences. It was absolutely incredible.
So, Dickard T, what did you think of Godzilla Minus One?
It's shit. No, it's peak. Like, it's the same as what everyone else here thinks. It's become my favorite Godzilla movie. It's got one of my favorite soundscapes in the Godzilla series. I'll describe it how I described it to a friend of mine, where I was pitching the movie to them, and I said, Godzilla 2014 and Shin Godzilla made me pog. Minus One made me cry a bit.
Understandable.
Cause it's so shitty. It's so bad it made him cry.
It's so dookie! No.
I can't believe how bad it was!
I have one thing to say. It was a good movie, but like, where was Kong as a prequel to MonsterVerse?
No, shut up! Shut the fuck up!
If we want to stick to like spoiler light stuff first before we dive into heavy stuff, we could just talk about some of the more surface level details, like what did we think about the general presentation of the movie, or like the design for Godzilla, things like that.
Yeah.
So like,
I thought it was super cool to see dinosaur Godzilla. That was great.
Like the instant this Godzilla appears, he is an aggressive motherfucker. He is out for blood.
Yeah.
He hates life itself after getting nuked. It's one of
he
the
hates humans.
He hates people. There is a sense that the Godzilla in this film is actively malicious, and it's kind of scary in a way that he hasn't been in a very long time. He feels like a proper movie monster in that he is specifically targeting
serial killer.
He is specifically
Yeah.
targeting people, like the scene on the boat where he is chasing after that boat. The music is building and he's just staring at him with his beady little eyes.
That's one of my favorite things about this Godzilla's design is every time I look at it, I'm always drawn to his little evil eyes.
He has beady little eyes.
Better to stare at you with.
They stand out so
This
much,
is-
and you can actually see him looking at people.
Yeah, this is definitely one of my favorite just overall depictions of Godzilla. Even the design, like I do have a couple quirks with the design. I think he's a little wide. He's kind of a brick house in a way that's not quite appealing to me. But overall, he's such a strong design for being ostensibly just a modern reinterpretation of the Heisei design.
Yeah, yeah.
Like Scary pointed out, those beady eyes, like where some of the proportions and stuff I'm not a fan of, the general head and overall vibe were like nailed because they did exactly what they set out to do with it and just give him that like look of like active malice and like anger.
Yeah, I would argue that like I think his design in the context of how aggressive of a creature he is in this movie, it actually for me it just makes a lot more sense because it has a very rudimentary way of thinking. It sees people, it doesn't like people, it's going to attack people. It's just a raw hatred down to a core, and with that very simplistic motive, like this very rudimentary, chunky reptilian thing that is just charging at you. I think the fact that he is built like a brick shit house makes a lot of sense.
Like it moves like a movie monster, but you get that sense of like he's conscious of what he's doing throughout the entire movie.
He is like when he
just
sets his foot
the
down,
way he actively
wants...
claws and disembowels the buildings and shit. Like he knows what he's up to.
When he sets his foot down, he wants to step on people. You get the sense. I got this. I got that sense at least.
No, I don't.
Like he's an environmental set piece, a force of nature, as the scout from TF2 would say. But he's also his own character, without giving him too much character.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
there is personality conveyed in his animation, and it sticks with you.
But you know what I like? I really like how pre-nuking Godzilla doesn't feel actively malicious. It just feels like an animal being like, "What the fuck are you all doing in my house?"
Yeah, it's just
he throws people.
Well, that's after they start shooting.
Like he actively targets and throws people. Still, I mean, he's still
but after they start shooting him. But he feels more animalistic. He still feels more animalistic to me before the nuking, and then after the nuking, it's like, oh, he's mad. He doesn't like that. Did you know that lizards hate being blasted by high-yield nuclear weapons?
No,
I
no
don't.
way. I didn't.
Just to pivot into a different topic, the special effects. This is a very small thing, but I really have to laud it. They recreated the Operation Crossroads footage, the famous like nuclear explosion shot.
The nuclear bomb footage.
It's used in SpongeBob. It's used in Godzilla 2014. If they used it here, it would have been...
It's used in Godzilla 98.
If they used it, it would have been instantly recognizable. It would have taken me out of the movie, but they used computer-generated effects to recreate that shot. And you know what it is, but you can tell it's different.
It looks good.
Yeah,
it looks really good.
Yeah, the VFX
and then you
in this
find
movie are... Yeah. Sorry, I was going to say the VFX in this movie are overall fantastic.
Yeah.
And then you find out this has a $15 million budget, and I'm pretty sure Hollywood should just blow itself up right now.
I want to get into that because I actually did a bit of research. I don't know if we want to bring that up now,
Mr. Professional.
I did want to point out on the VFX side of things, aside from just the Castle Bravo recreation and everything, overall the VFX in this were kind of incredible. Like the only times where I was kind of like the only times where I was really taken out weren't even ways that like the average viewer would care about. They were the 3D modeler in me going like, okay, so Godzilla's a very basic rig. I can see how the weights are shifting on his neck when he walks. Shit like that.
I kind of see what you're talking about.
But like,
I'm so glad I don't live in a world like that where I would have noticed those details.
For me,
that doesn't take away from it for me. But it's just something I noticed. But the thing, and even then, even if it were negative to me, it's completely overshadowed by how unbelievably phenomenal the water effects in this movie are, and the general like simulations for like
That was something that Yamazaki brought up in an interview. He was talking about how the VFX for the water was the hardest to get right. He didn't go into detail because it was like a fluff piece for go see the movie in theaters. But like he briefly talked about
go see the
water.
movie. Yay.
The water was very difficult to get right. He says.
Well, it fucking paid off because it looks amazing.
Because is it just me or like? This is the first Godzilla movie that a majority of it takes place in the ocean. Like the ocean's been like a theme in the other movies, like for like 5 minutes. But no, most of the movie takes place in the sea in this.
A lot of it does, yeah. The climax definitely.
Two of the major Godzilla set pieces are entirely naval.
The opening shot is of the plane going over the ocean.
Yeah, it's a very important thing that doesn't really get tapped into a whole lot in other Godzilla movies.
Yeah, because most of the time he just comes out of the ocean and then the rest of it takes place on land.
Which is very interesting because from the get-go, his original plot is being an ocean anomaly, targeting and, dotting ships as it gets to shore. This is the first time a movie really dove into him doing that.
It's the first time he's been shown getting nuked as well. It's the first time we've actually seen his origin story.
Because I'm going to say once we start getting into like the plot portion of our discussion, when the pin drop scene happened at the end, and I straight up had like a full on like reel back of the entire movie, reflecting on everything I witnessed. And one of the highlights was just simply once our main character, he starts his job shooting the mines, and when the mines exploded, like the water effects were perfect. Like, just in those simple scenes, just establishing his backstory as to what he's doing in this post-war era, it was beautiful.
I can't imagine ever having that job. That job seems like it would fucking suck, dude.
That is a theme of the movie. He takes in this job that is very hazardous and he could potentially die. And his wife is like, no, don't do it. Life is important. And
are you implying this movie has themes? Are you implying this movie has themes? Next, you're going to say RoboCop is political.
War creates waste that the people after war have to pick up and deal with, even though they shouldn't have to. Did you know this movie is anti-war? They really don't like war in this movie.
No way.
But I was going to say earlier, my cup!
Where did that come from?
How'd you do that?
Okay, well that's a funny cut to do in the middle of the review.
I guess we can get it. I guess we could get into spoilers.
This movie has themes.
It's fucking nuts.
A lot of them.
There is so the main character of the film, his name is Shikishima. This is a spoiler for later in the movie, but he is a failed kamikaze pilot. Like, he abandoned his position to go to the island at the start of the film, and his inability to fire the 20 millimeter plane gun was what got his friends killed, and that is weighing on him. He feels as if he is directly responsible for their deaths. He feels as though he needs to avenge them. That is a part of the tension of the movie. You don't know if he is ultimately going to go through with ending his life to avenge them. And
he wants to avenge them, but he doesn't know how.
And because he never got to fulfill his duty, he feels as though his war is continuing. Like World War II never ended for him.
The same can be said for a lot of veterans after World War II, I'm guessing.
This is called allegory for PTSD.
Well, it's not even allegory. It is PTSD.
Well, it's not. That's not even allegory. Godzilla is allegory for the survivor's guilt.
Yes,
part.
Godzilla is like a giant.
That's what I meant. I mixed my thoughts. Yeah.
Again, like if there's a possibility that, like the commander character, the commander mechanic or whatever, he says
Tachibana.
nothing. Yeah, Tachibana says nothing could survive that 20 millimeter cannon. So there's that thought it could have actually done something. So that's always there too.
But that's also how layered the theme is to me, because they establish early on the main, moral takeaway of the movie when one of the mechanics, comes up to Koichi and says, "I get it. Why throw away your life for something you already know the outcome of?" And you kind of feel that in the next scene with Godzilla with him hesitating to shoot the gun. That doesn't mean he wouldn't feel survivor's guilt or anything. But, like, realistically, you know, as the audience, we know nothing's going to fucking happen to Godzilla if you shoot him with that. You know, that kind of thing.
I still like to
Not
think
just
that
because,
was like,
you know,
I still like to think that was an element of like, what if?
I get that. No, that is an element, the what if part.
Like the
Yeah,
helicopters
part
at the
is
start of
always-
Shin before, like, he runs into the water. Like, what if they had just shot
Yeah.
him before he
Yeah, I can
evolved
see what
fully?
you mean.
Yeah, I was gonna say, the what if part is important.
The hesitation is what cost.
And we
Yeah.
know that it is a very critical aspect of his PTSD, especially during the dream sequence where he was reliving that experience, you know, when he exited the building, and he's just reliving that entire thing. So we already know, or not that we know, but it's heavily implied that the entire scene is constantly replaying in his head when he goes to sleep or is left alone to his thoughts. So that moment
can't blame
where
him.
the 20 mil, where the guy says the 20 mil can kill anything, of course he's remembering all of that.
They hadn't fired a shot at Godzilla, and the most he'd done was just he had a light shine in his eyes and was taken by surprise at that thing. So of course he attacked it, thinking it was probably a hostile animal. He didn't actually start attacking them until they shot at him. Like, what if they had just like bunkered down and not shot at Godzilla? He probably would have just walked off.
It's about the what if, the horrors of warfare, and what fear can make you do in that moment.
Absolutely.
I don't know if this is the right question for this podcast, but do you think they were non-committal in some regards?
Could you explain?
like,
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Yeah,
in what ways do you think that would come up? Like,
Now-
being non-committal?
I think it's because that is not what the movie is about, but they very much sidestepped having to address the US's occupation of Japan. They explained that with, oh, Godzilla scared them off, or they don't want to actually help because the Soviets would think they're doing something.
So no, I don't think that was a sidestep because
Okay.
in that regards, they made it very clear when earlier on that when there was a initial threat and people were starting to recognize that Goji was a potential threat, they reached out to the U.S. and the U.S. basically stated, "We are not getting involved because we are dealing with the looming threats of the Soviets. You're on your own. This seems like a minor issue."
The U.S. really went, we created this thing, tee-hee, oops.
Yeah, no.
No,
Which basically every major power that was presented within that movie, everybody that wasn't Japan, and specifically everybody that wasn't the government related, had their own very specific priorities. We saw that with the discussions on how the soldiers and the participants of the operation, you know, especially in the like the kitchen scenes or in the bar scenes with his crewmates, the only people who seemed to genuinely care about the livelihood of the individuals were the individuals themselves. Yeah, like one of the looming themes was the governments don't care.
Yeah, I was
They
gonna
only
say that's
care
a
about
central like
our-
theme through the narrative. I think to me, like, whether it was intentional, you know, an intentional visual or not. Well, I mean, it was intentional because it's a full CG shot. They clearly intended it like that, but also like in the one moment where like the defense force actually tries to counter Godzilla on land, they're only protecting the Parliament building.
That's
Yeah,
right.
they're not helping the civilians
That's-
whatsoever.
that's the
They're
dive
actively
building.
firing on...
They're firing into a crowd of they're actively firing into a space still filled with civilians.
Right.
Which, to
Yeah,
be
and-
fair, you're not going to get around that with what was happening.
No, not at all.
Like, naturally. But that being said, like, with the general, I don't want to explicitly say anti-government theme. Like,
Oh no,
I'm
there's
sure
totally an
there's-
anti-government theme.
I'm sure there is some kind of middle ground of more so than the country needs to change, not that the government itself is just bad, right? I don't think they're like, hey, the government should never do anything ever kind of like message in this movie. I think it is the people need to step up and like lead the country to better, you know, pastures, right? To greener
Look
pastures.
what the old ways got us. We need to change this shit.
Well,
Yeah.
Going back to the like overarching themes, I can't help but compare this movie to Shin Godzilla, not only because of the sheer impact that it had on me as a watcher, but if we look back at Shin Godzilla, the overarching theme of the movie was gross government negligence and where that gets you. This is in this movie, the shift is no longer on the government aspect of the movie. This is on the people and the survivors of the war, the individuals. With this overarching theme that we have, or at least that I have between these two movies, seeing that these are the only two Goji movies that have really left a meaningful impact on me at this point. Sorry, everybody.
I understand.
But
I'm killing you.
But that's fine. That's fine.
Me too.
But the fact of the matter is, with the themes that have been set, and from what you all have told me over the years, this movie really was not trying to focus on government failure anymore, and it was straight up on how the individuals were impacted. We saw that in the opening or in one of the opening sequences where our main character returns back home and the neighbor is just berating him constantly.
Yeah.
And,
how dare you not?
And
that was the social climate that the government fostered.
I was going to say, yeah, that was
exactly.
It was really nice to. Okay, obviously it's dreary and dark as a theme, but like I enjoyed that there was social commentary on how the nature of the imperialist regime affected, the citizens of the country who are
The
affected by the
propaganda
war.
effects.
Because, well, just in general, because it was just the general cultural norm, right? That pride and honor for, the empire until death, right? So when he comes back and, he fled his duty as a kamikaze pilot, you see her like confused expression just morph into this like this scorn, this scowl.
Yeah.
Well,
and she practically growls at him because she solely blames those who did not fulfill their duty to the empire as like.
But to further expand on that,
reason.
The big thing that showcased was obviously she lost her kids. He lost.
Well,
his
yeah,
parents.
she's grieving too.
So she is grieving, and the only rational thing she can do at this point, from her perspective of losing her offspring, her family, is to blame the efforts on somebody that is immediately there. That, I mean, like in times of high stress, you tend to either fall back on either familial core values or what a greater power, in this case, the government, is telling you. And for her, she knew that the kamikaze pilots, and it was understood that the kamikaze pilots were giving their lives for the greater goods.
Which is kind of what I'm tying into, like lashing out, because the perfect scapegoat for that is there to someone who fled their duty. Mm-hmm. Even if the duty was to just throw your life away in a losing battle, because it was the final days of World War II. They lost already. The war was pretty much won by the Allied powers.
Oh yeah,
and,
Germany was already over.
It's funny bringing this up because we get like a few months ago we got context that like this angle was completely like scraped out of Godzilla 2014, but like the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were just completely unnecessary. They were just demonstrations of shock and awe by the US over the people of Japan. By 1945, the war was it was just over. There was really no other outcome for Japan other than eventually negotiating a peace treaty.
This is spicy.
They had no resources. They had no resources, and we just basically...
Next, you're gonna say RoboCop is political. And I think that's part of why it's so emotionally resonant, not just with Simmons, not just with myself, but with pretty much everyone who's watched this in some regard. Even if you're not a Japanese citizen or even well versed in, the culture of Japan, this is still something that puts you in the shoes of the other side. Because especially in America, we're only taught like, World War II happened and we won and it was glorious. Unfortunately, 2 Japanese cities exploded. Not just myself, not just like North Americans, just people around the world should just have some perspective on, you know.
Right.
Because like most of the stuff we learn about that or is depicted in movies is the bombings of the two cities. The fire bombings of Tokyo really never gets touched upon.
We see that in the movie. Those ruins, that's in Ginza, that's in Tokyo. That's the result of the fire bombs.
Man, when
Yeah.
they cut that scene where he's just walking through the rubble, I was like, oh, it's gonna be one of these kinds of movies. Oh boy.
Here you go.
We're in for a
You see him
we're in
stop
for a
it.
ride.
You see him stop at one pile of rubble with just like a door frame left, and you go, "Oh man."
Hey, have you seen my
What's
parents?
that mean?
Yeah, your parents. My kids died, and your parents died in the fire bombings too. I hate you so much. It's just, oh man, this is gonna be a depressing
it's
ride.
Oh boy.
To steer this back into the plot of the movie proper.
Yeah, because we kind of just
One-
tangented a bit.
One thing that I think is extra potent about Godzilla being really scary in this is that we see Shikishima get this new family. He finds this new family in all of this chaos, and slowly his house begins to be rebuilt. He gets friends. He gets a plucky cast of fun side characters, and you know, in the background, Godzilla's there. You don't know when he's gonna show up. You don't know when he's gonna.
Fucking lizards in the ocean somewhere.
He's
His
destroying
presence
ships.
is felt in the narrative.
So like when he shows up and brings it back down to ground zero, less than -1, you could say, it's like, holy shit, this is tragic as hell.
Yeah, because Ginza's
Yeah.
like f***ing toasted, and they're also, oh, Ginza rebuilt so fast. We actually have hope now. The Parliament building stuff. Godzilla comes
Yeah.
marching in and knocks all that shit down, and then just blows up the government.
That's the thing I've loved about -1, because I've seen it 3 times now. And it's gotten better each time. I have teared up more at certain scenes each time I've watched it because of just how raw and impactful that shit is. And
When they tell Akiko, like, oh, your mother's coming away for just a few days, and then there's just silence, and then you just hear her start crying, you're like, oh, that's not,
was awful.
not good. That's sad.
the thing that is like one of my favorite things when it comes to good movies is when you go back and almost everything that happens in the movie, you go, oh, that's setup or that's thematic. And like, there's like almost not a single wasted line of dialogue. And it's
Like, after
It's so
seeing the
good.
movie a few days later, I was like, oh, wait a minute. They're setting up the pressure thing for the end of the movie by having the deep sea fish come up with Godzilla, because they're probably attached to his body, and when he rises up from the depths, as Hanna-Barbera once cleverly said.
30 stories high.
They all died because of the pressure change.
The warning sign that Goji is near is the deep sea fish are coming to the surface. And initially, when they presented that at the very beginning of the movie, I thought they were kind of just like some mutilated baby dolls or something like that, because they're like pink, they look kind of melted. And then as they explain it further, and with talking to D after the movie, he's like, no, actually, they're kind of just turned inside out because of the rapid depressurization of them.
Delta P is a
I never got that.
Yeah.
that one's not Delta P, that's just decompression.
I thought the prop for them was just unclear at first.
The prop is a bit unclear, but that's also because that's also because they're just constantly wading around in the water, so you don't get quite a still look at them. But like,
And
They looked like
I-
dolls.
they are definitely like they are definitely like black deep sea fish, and those are just like their guts coming out of their mouths, which is
and that was something that I was trying to pay
disgusting, but
attention to.
kind of what happens.
when the professor guy, Doc, was like, we've developed a way to beat Godzilla, and they was about to do the thing, I was like, my first thought was, oh, he's about to pull out the oxygen destroyer. This is this movie's Sarazawa. And then he did the
I
thing, and I'm
was slightly
like, way
dreading
more
that.
goddamn clever.
That is like
Well, no,
I'm
kind of
so glad they didn't do oxygen
It kind
destroyer.
of makes sense. That's
It's kind of grounded, but the cool thing, it's kind of grounded, but the cool thing is it does also evoke the imagery of the oxygen destroyer without just being it. because
Right.
of the sinking him down with all the bubbles around him.
You still get your
Thematically, it worked out
imagery, but
perfectly.
something different.
And thematically, it
That's
was
so
perfect
crazy.
because the Freon cylinders are very grounded in reality. Freon was tech of the era,
Yeah.
and
They used it in
we
Godzilla
didn't have to
movies.
stretch our we didn't even have to stretch our suspension of disbelief for an oxygen destroyer. Yeah, so the ultimate point being is all the technology that was suggested for this movie was so grounded in the era of the movie and in the setting. Everything aside from Goji made sense for the movie. And one of the things that I want to do afterwards is, once this movie is more readily available within the States for just broader audiences to watch, I want to take the scene where they introduce the superplane at the end of the movie. No,
the Shinden.
the Shinden. I want to take that like a still of that plane and give it to my brother, who's a huge airplane, like World War II airplane enthusiast, and like he's got an encyclopedic knowledge, and get his thoughts on it, because I think that is also grounded in a bit of reality.
It was a prototype.
I have a bit on that. I was gonna say that is a real prototype plane. Only 2 were made. They got 45 minutes of test flights because the day they flew it, something happened down at Hiroshima.
Oh, you're right.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay.
The one you see in the movie is a full scale, in-depth prop, right? In-depth replica of the actual Shinden. And when Toho finished filming the movie, they donated to, I forget what museum it was, but they did. Just out of nowhere, they just said, by the way, here's a Shinden.
That's so cool, though.
There's also
I
one
think-
other detail about it that I wanted to bring up. Is that the name Shinden, it's actually named after Shin Godzilla.
That's right. And Kong is there.
Yeah,
and
it's true.
Ghidorah's gonna show up. And
It's
Destroyer's
true.
gonna show up and
It's
kill
true.
them.
It's true. During World War II, Hideaki Anno came through the time portal in Japan and said, "Hey, watch my new movie."
He said, Chewie,
Okay,
we're home.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt because I have something for the blooper reel. I just literally clipped my tooth on my microphone, and it
Oh,
really
no.
fucking hurts now.
Oh, no.
How did you fucking do that?
Is it
I
like a
like
Oh my
forward.
god, it's not bad. It's not bad, is it? Like it's
No,
like,
no, it's
how,
just, it's
how
just
bad
a
is
little
it?
sore. It's fortunately I have a
Okay.
shock mountain, but I lunged forward and I
Okay.
clipped my tooth, and I'm like, oh. Anyway,
I went to the dentist
Okay,
today and got some fillings in, everyone.
for the blooper reel. Okay,
Well, you know what, Golden, you know what you could call it? You could call it a demo reel.
I'm gonna strangle you in real life.
What if I punched you in the mouth?
You can't reach me. Well, actually, you can. You have long arms.
Now,
I have decent
uh,
arms. We're getting distracted. Okay, so the point is, yeah, the movie's very grounded in reality with its depictions of not just the cultural landscape at the time, but just the technology at the time as well. And they still managed to craft a believable Godzilla story without, without the sci-fi elements that usually are the crux of your anti-Godzilla plans in these movies.
yeah.
There's no, we're going to
Which
call
is nice.
Mothra. There's no, we're building a giant robot to fight him. There's no, I don't know, Atlantis is mad at us or something like that.
so my hot take. So I did not actually I was like vibing through the movie for the majority of the movie. I will be very honest, as a not huge Godzilla fan, or it's not that I'm not a Godzilla fan, it's just I'm not well versed, right?
Mhm.
But as somebody who is very new to the franchise, and riding that high that Shin Goji gave me all the way through, this really pumped up action movie that when D and I first saw it in theaters, we were just, after the atomic breath scene, we just like, we're drop jawed. We stare at the screen. We kind of look at each other, still drop jawed, and then we look back at the screen. The movie was phenomenal. However, in this movie, going through it, I was really appreciative of the themes. I was really appreciative of a lot of the historical accuracy and of the depiction of PTSD, and especially post-war and military-related PTSD. I guess the little bit of tidbit I will add for context is I am actively serving in the military at this time, so that part hit home. Once we get to the very end of the movie, we're now at the climactic naval scene. and then the pin drop moment hit. You know, everything goes silent, and Goji is charging its heat breath, as they called it in the translation, but his atomic breath. And then all of a sudden you see the Shinden flying in, preparing for the final kamikaze mission, essentially. That's when everything started crashing in. I think I mentioned earlier that me coming through the movie, I literally was reeling back the entire movie in rapid succession all at once. That is when the movie hit me like a freight train. I'm telling you, everything else for the movie as just a novice, but after that scene hit, and I had like a life flash before my eyes of the entire sequence of the movie up to this point. That's when I was like, wait a second, this movie is a masterpiece.
I fully believe that if Tachibana hadn't told him that you could eject from the plane, he would have killed.
Yeah, but
well, yes, that was his plan. You actually have a wide shot with no audio from them. You have a wide shot with no audio from them, and you see him pointing out the ejector seat.
That's right. That's
you just don't know what he told him.
Well, for me, especially with my encyclopedic knowledge, brother, I knew that was an ejection seat, but it didn't click until the very last moment. Also,
because it clicks when it ejects him.
And no, not even that. Like when the plane hit, and I will also just mention that the one CG that took me out of the movie was when the plane sticks into Goji's mouth, and there's no crumple, there's no give. It is literally just a dead stop. That was kind of funny to me.
Yeah,
but I also had
it's style over substance there.
It is, but that also gave me a cinematic parallel to where I had a little bit of immersion breaking in Sheen in the train scene when the trains were riding up on the side of Shin Goji. You know?
Yeah, when they were coiling around him, it was awesome.
Right, which
is cool.
But honestly, thinking about it though, it's very reminiscent of all of those classic rubber suit city destruction scenes. Not all of them are slowed down correctly. Some of them look kind of goofy, and it's great.
Sometimes you can see it's a perfect fumble. Yeah.
Exactly.
Sometimes you see them fumble or yeah.
Yes, even though this was not a rubber suit Goji, it still felt like one. The masterful execution that we had with Hideaki Anno and Sheen, we had it here again. Especially in the opening sequence when we are dealing with infantile Goji, I guess we can call him, or pre-evolution Goji.
Boo boo baby.
I will say he moved around in a way that was like, this looks a little strange. Once it scales up and the imperfections can kind of be, things get smaller, so the details are lost, and that is better for scale.
With that, I think when I brought up a little bit of creature design critique on Godzilla in this movie, it's a lot of it is levied towards Oto Island Goji. They want him to be like a dinosaur looking thing, but they don't really reference any dinosaur like kind of posture or anything behind that, which doesn't really take me out of the movie, but it is a very unnaturally animated creature for what is supposed to be Godzilla before being an unnatural mutation.
Yeah,
right.
Which is a little
he already looked up.
But yeah, exactly. If they maybe tapped in more to like the Godzillasaurus or something like that, and maybe made him a little more horizontal to kind of be more reminiscent of a proper surviving theropod. Like, I think that could have driven it home how his upright stance and like his proportions are a reflection of, being unnaturally altered against his will.
Correct. Yeah, like in the very beginning, like I mentioned previously, it's a very, very crude organism, and it looks extremely crude. It did not evolve naturally. That's why you have all these jagged edges and spikes. Now, one other thing that I wanted to point out with my interpretation of the movie was the key scene, the one that everybody was waiting for, was the first atomic breath sequence, where I thought the coolest aspect of it was the fact that his spines were essentially control rods for this nuclear reaction. And one thing that I was very concerned about when I first saw it, because it was a very gradual buildup with how they presented it initially, But one of my concerns was what we did get a little bit of in Sheen, but what we especially got in a lot of the modern American releases, where the next time we see the atomic breath, it's going to be rushed. It's not going to look natural anymore. But no, in those final sequences before the pin drop, he is charging at the exact same speed. The timing still matches to everything else that is going on. That dread is just building. They just let you sit in fear, waiting for him to explode.
That was one thing I also wanted to touch on, is that when I talked about how everything plays a part in the thematics and overall like plot and setting of this movie, and everything serves purpose in a really satisfying way, even that atomic breath charging up is something like that. Because in the finale alone, there are 2 crucial moments that happen because they take advantage of how slowly he charges up. It's nice watching a movie where every aspect, you can see that they thought about it.
They take advantage of the fact that he takes a while to do this. And by the time that he sends it out, they've already sent out their dummy ship and bamboozled him.
Well, there's that. There's taking advantage of the long charge time to get the cables wrapped around and submerge him. And then, of course, there is the final kamikaze run. That all takes advantage of how he takes 1,000,000 years to charge up.
Yes. I knew they were going to beat Godzilla, and I just didn't know how. I didn't expect them to actually just blow his head off. And his body just kind of sits there without a head and just crumples into nothing. I was like, God damn, that's the most violent way they've ever killed Godzilla.
No, but it was perfect because like he was charged up. And
his radiation had nowhere to go.
His brain was chopped off. There was no more control of the body, so it just leaked. And
it's like
God.
It's like how in the opening boat chase, when they shoot the mine in his mouth, and he just kind of is floating there, just essentially what is probably dead until it regenerates his brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a key difference, because at that sequence, the atomic breath wasn't even introduced yet. So there was no chain reaction that was going on internally that was going to stop the regeneration. When I was reflecting back on a lot of the characterization stuff, or the characters specifically, because the people were such an important aspect of this movie in developing the dread and the fear that was going on. The one character that I was expecting to just be the write-off character was the deckhand, who was extremely war. He was infatuated with war, and maybe not necessarily the war, but the pride of going to war. That is a very real thing, and that I've been exposed to. And I was very concerned with that, especially with how they handled a lot of the sensitive topics in this movie, especially with the kamikaze. They handled that very masterfully. But for me, that scene was a big ticking time bomb for me, because when they told him that he could not go on the final mission, and he's just standing there on the shore, just not sure what to do, and he's just screaming into the void, I was like, okay, well, that's the last we're going to see of him, and that's his unfulfilling ending. But then what you don't see a lot in these depictions of these kinds of individuals is people who actually go out to take action on this desire to contribute in a meaningful way. And when he shows up with the tugboat squad, it felt a little bit out of reality for me, just based on my immediate exposure to these kinds of individuals. But it was very satisfying, because it made a lot of sense with him being in the meeting. People brought up using boats to tow up Godzilla in case of emergency. So that seed was already planted earlier on that, okay, plan C is literally just rip him out of the water with force and cables. He rallies all these civilians.
It's the big rousing movie
tugboats,
moment.
And that's... Yeah,
the only thing that took me out of that scene was like, what was Godzilla doing while they were spending like 40 minutes?
Yeah, he was busy down there. It's also a bit of suspension of disbelief, where you're so wrapped up in this situation that's happening that you kind of forget about one thing that's happening. And this is one of those things of your mileage may vary, because either it bothers you that Godzilla is just vibing down there without, doing anything, or it doesn't bother you. I think it's fine because we need to show.
It doesn't.
I think it's fine because we need to show that this thing is happening. We need to show that the tugboats are showing up to save the day.
I was gonna say it doesn't bug me because, like, for one, I don't care that we didn't spend 40 minutes attaching all the tugboats. So many people will criticize movies because time dilation
I'm not
is just
talking
like
about
that is
that. I
inherently
mean,
an
like,
issue.
I'm not
No,
talking
I know,
about
I know,
that in
I know,
particular.
I know.
I'm talking about the overall scene.
I'm aware.
Of, like, it takes a
I'm
very
aware.
long time.
I'm aware.
Okay.
I'm aware. We've established that Goji is going through this rapid pressurization and depressurization. And, like, if you want to know why he probably hung down there, it's probably so he can continue pressurizing and adjusting.
Yeah, that was self-preservation.
I guess so.
Yeah, no, because in that situation, like, he was at the bottom of the ocean. I think the depiction of Goji in this movie was it did have a relatively developed form of intelligence, and when it was at the bottom of the ocean and it realized that it was kind of fucked down there, but was still alive, it kind of just shut down in order to prepare to just adapt to
prepare to
the new
equalize.
pressurization. And as he started ripping back up pretty quickly, and then he stopped. He's still conscious, and we see that when he finally surfaces, but he's just trying to equalize again.
The director said he wants to do a sequel, and, like, I know people, like, for years people are like, oh, we want Shin Godzilla 2 or something like that. It's like, no, Shin Godzilla doesn't need a sequel, like, at all. But this movie, I wouldn't actually mind a sequel to. Like,
yeah, I mean, I don't think you can really do something with these characters again because I feel like their arcs are complete. But you can easily make a sequel in this setting again. You can cover new topics.
I said this before. Set it at, like, the very end of the 80s Japanese economic boom, when that bubble burst and everyone's credit score goes down to -1.
Oh my god!
It goes down to -2.
We got one, everyone. Oh, I keep ruining these bits with my microphone hits. God fucking damn it.
Yeah, but it's funny, so...
Yeah, Godzilla shows up at the worst possible moment for him to show up at.
One thing that I was thinking of as a potential, like, sequel topic is at the very end of the movie we see Noriko has a bit of a spooky scarring going on. There's, like, an ink
she's got super
that shows
cancer.
up on her. Yeah, she's got super cancer. No, but Japan, I don't know if you know this, but people got hurt in those bomb blasts, and they were labeled as hibakusha. They were people who were scarred.
Yes.
It's actually a very sad topic because their children were also ostracized for it despite doing nothing wrong. They were just the kids of parents who were affected by radiation. So I'm thinking that's another potential avenue they could explore for a sequel. It would be very serious, but this movie has some serious topics.
Almost
so
like this movie is serious.
This movie has some bite.
And that would be that would be a very fitting way to continue to make these socially aware period pieces, because
it's still relevant because it kind of flared up again after the Fukushima disaster. There's more hibakusha because of that.
Yeah, and I think that's
Godzilla
something you could tell.
What's your funny joke?
I think Godzilla should it's going to be really funny. Thank you very much for prefacing that. I think Godzilla should come back during the 2004 like otaku crisis in Japan, and he kills all otakus. Give me my soda. Gulp. No,
confiscated.
I shouldn't sit too close to the wall.
Did you smack the wall again?
Yeah.
So, D, when we were talking in the car last night, one thing that you brought up was soundtrack.
Yes.
So I want to actually hear all your thoughts on soundtrack.
Can I actually do have a hot take.
What's your hot take on the soundtrack or whatever?
I think it's kind of similar to Shin Godzilla, where I think all of the original pieces are the best parts of the movie, and the Ifukube tracks, they're good, but they feel a little out of place in that I think they are too melodic.
Yeah.
They're not droning like the rest of the soundtrack. It's a lot of that soundtrack is built off of like a pitch or a note that is sustained, and it keeps building and building and building throughout the scene.
It's
until
droning.
Huge payoff, and yeah, it's droning, and it fits with the scene that it's usually played in. And the Godzilla theme, they do reorchestrate it, which I will give them many props for. That's something Shin Godzilla did not do. And it sounds like it fits.
What Abe's like. Not Abe, Ano. That's what Ano's like.
That's what Ano's like.
That's what Shinzo Abe's like. He loves reusing Showa era music in his movies.
Like I was saying, the music is very melodic and catchy in a way that the rest of the soundtrack is not. And I could go either way. They could have had an original piece for those scenes. It's a cool moment. That's what it's supposed to be. So ultimately, I'm like, I could do with or without it.
I don't think the Godzilla theme takes away when they first start mobilizing. The actual march starts up, right?
Yeah, that
feels
fun.
good.
That's the march. That's the big moment.
But halfway through, they switch to King Kong's theme.
That is a running issue with Ifukube's score. I don't know if you know this, Simmons, but there is a composer named Akira Ifukube. He did the scores for most of the Showa run of Godzilla. And a thing that he does a lot is he reuses a lot of music that used to be specific to a moment or a character, and he reuses it like willy-nilly. Like there's a monster movie called Varan the Unbelievable, or Varan the Giant Monster, and the theme of that movie is reused for Rodan. So 20 years later, when he's doing a new movie with Rodan, it's now the Rodan theme. Yeah, that's kind of happened with the King Kong theme. In King Kong vs. Godzilla, there was this sort of native chant music, and that was a theme throughout the movie for King Kong. But in Godzilla vs. Destoroyah, he did this sort of medley of all the, well, not all of the, but a bunch of Godzilla music he did.
Of a few different Godzilla. Actually, it's only two. It's only the March and the King Kong. It goes right back to Godzilla.
Yeah, it's a couple of, it's those. And since then, because that is a medley and it is a track that is easily reusable, they have used that track multiple times in other movies and still included the part with King Kong. So what's kind of happened is it's morphed into Godzilla's theme, and that kind of reached a head here where the King Kong, like, rhythm is still there, but it's for a scene where they're like bringing boats around Godzilla.
Okay, so
it's a wonderful theme. Lots of brown face.
That was the King Kong scene. That's a different conversation. The Mothra theme is also another thing. The Mothra versus
the Mothra
Godzilla
theme was in there too.
It's literally Mothra's song.
Yeah, it's Mahara Mosura, right? That's the melody of that, and it is distinctly Mothra's leitmotif for that movie, and yet it plays when there is a train dangling out of Godzilla's mouth.
What this means,
you know what I mean?
Is the sequel is going to have Mothra. This is a clever hint that she's going to be in this.
This is a clever hint that King Kong likes ships.
Back on the music thing, because I do have thoughts about that, and it is one thing that I will say is a little disappointing from me, is there are so many unique tracks unique to the 1954 Godzilla that have never been reused. And they could have totally just fucking done that, you know? Oto Island and Godzilla's initial arrival to shore are these wonderful, like, chaotic, swelling themes, which would have been fantastic for when he first comes into the city.
I will gotta say, though, about, like, when he first goes into the water after Shikishima lures him into there, and it's like, it starts out really slow, and then as soon as they're like, all right, engage the plan, and then it picks up.
No, that's what I'm talking about, when the march starts up. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. That's really good. And then the King Kong theme starts up.
That's a cool use of it. And then the King Kong theme starts.
Yeah,
that is more of a if you know type of deal.
Yes.
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. So it's not going to ruin your experience.
For me, not knowing any of this background, this is actually very informative for me. But as somebody who already struggles to identify music to begin with, by name, that I honestly thought that with the tribal aspect of the music did fit really well. Now,
it's at the very least a driving rhythmic beat.
Yes, it is for
exactly.
Specifically when the ships are like smashing together as they're circling him.
when they're circling him, and yeah.
what I'm hearing from this is there are much better options that could have been used.
I think so. Yes, I think there are better options overall. In fact, the march I was thinking of is the one that got reused in Shin Godzilla with the trains. That's probably why they didn't reuse that march.
But anyway, on the new music, I have to say that's some good stuff. My favorite track. My two favorite tracks from the soundtrack are titled. One, Divine, which is the music that plays. It's the song that plays when he's building up his nuclear attack during Ginza and when he's underneath the ship. And it's also the song that plays in the original reveal trailer for this movie.
I love that.
And the second one is Resolution, which is when Shikishima's
the droning notes.
When Shikishima's got his resolution going. And he's circling Godzilla, and it's playing that one note over and over, but it builds up to the point where Godzilla, when he's walking into the thing, it has like the Halo choir going in, of just
that was so good.
The final moment of the plane,
it's very
zooming
good.
in is like holy.
Zooming out to see.
And like that is something that does make me wish, maybe if not better picks for the Godzilla themes that they used in those scenes, maybe composing something that is still that dreadful, dreary tone, but still has some more rhythm and melody to it, like a divergence from the norm of the rest of the soundtrack. Because that's kind of what the Godzilla themes are. There are moments that are divergences from what you're expecting, right? Because it's like no one expected Godzilla to come on land. That's why. So his theme is playing because everyone's like, "Oh my God, the horror!" Ooh! And with yeah, and with the later one, it's like, okay, Jesus Christ, it's now or never. We have to do this.
During the Shinden scene, Shikishima really showed what a good pilot he was, and because he handled that thing without any other training in it, like an expert. And that just made me realize, wow, they made him a kamikaze pilot. He would have been much better suited for like a general fighter pilot instead of just throwing his talent away.
Wow, it is almost like. It is almost like every facet of this movie. It's almost like every facet of this movie has payoff, even through simple incidental dialogue. The movie opens with him doing a hard runway landing and them complimenting his fighting skills.
Oh my God! I didn't realize that.
Yeah. No, I
those are like the first lines of dialogue in the movie.
You know, one of the biggest recurring themes with him was when death was imminent and there was no way out. He froze. In the end, because of his knowledge of the ejection seat, his nerves were gone.
Yeah, because he wasn't like, I'm going to die no matter what.
Knowledge of that? Well, actually, no, you're right. It would be that because it wasn't also thinking about the future and living. It was. I don't think it was even just the ejection seat. It was Tachibana telling him live.
Yeah.
The guy who just beat the shit out of him and said, I hate you so much. And then he saw him looking at the photos of all the old people and the drawings that his daughter gave him.
How he still kept him after all this time.
No, but it carries back to the beginning of the movie. He like one of the recurring things was his parents told him to live. That's why he most likely got out of his kamikaze mission initially. Tachibana told him
yes.
And therefore he is going to go full ham.
Well, yes, but the whole thing is that Tachibana coming around is the thing that kind of frees him of some of that survivor's guilt. Now that he's like, it's the thing that kicks him into gear to actually fight for the future.
They both had survivor's guilt in their own ways.
Which is the thing that made him freeze up, because every other time, the reason he freezes up is because he, just like at the start of the movie, they outright say it to you, why follow orders? Why die for a mission that you know the outcome of?
Yeah, they say, what's the benefit of dying? What's the good of dying honorably if you...
Yeah, the mechanic the mechanic at the very beginning, for the record.
Yes.
I'm glad you didn't do this. Or I'm glad you did what you did.
We need more fighter pilots like you.
Oh my God. You know what? It just hit me. He also freezed up during the Ginza nuclear beam scene. It had to be Noriko to push him out. We've completely ignored Noriko this entire.
I've been meaning to get to
Noriko.
that. Bit of a weak topic, I think, because I don't think they did the most with her that they could have. I think her and Akiko were more or less props to Shikishima's story. I think they introduced her like she was this plucky scavenger and like, ooh, this guy's interesting. And then she follows him. And then like right after the time jump, she's already in housewife mode. And it's like, I get it. I know why she needs to be his emotional anchor. And I don't know. They could have done more with her, I find.
I always assumed that she just wanted some sense of normalcy back in her life after living through the firebombing, so she's just doing what she thought she would probably want to do with her life.
Exactly.
That is part of it.
It's also a thing of
I don't think
you don't
them
need to
introducing
flesh
her
out,
that way.
You don't need to flesh out every character that you bring into the film, because then the movie is like 3 hours long. But
and also
they introduce her in such a specific way
that's-
too, and it feels like something they brush over in favor of the main story.
I don't feel it's
gotta
rushing over. Like, well, I think it's just one of those things where it's not there to say she's a scavenger and all this stuff. I think it's just there to show the up situation everybody was in.
Well, yeah,
And
but she had kind of
how
like
desperate
a
people are to
spunky
cling to normalcy
thing
that
with
she
her.
immediately bunkers in with him, you know?
No, okay. So my take on her, with her introduction in scavenger mode with Akiko, was, let's face the facts. She was there for the fire bombings. She had a person who thrusted their child onto her to save their child. Her sense of normal is gone. So what's she gonna do? She's going to just start doing whatever the hell she thinks is going to be necessary for the both of them to survive.
Well, I'm thinking like in terms of
Like-
movie making, you usually introduce a character like this, and they you see them evolve in a way that is a little more natural. And like I understand the real life reason for why she would go into housewife mode, but she does also say, "I got a job and I'm going to be working," and you don't have to.
Yeah.
You yourself don't have to get to this. You don't have to keep doing this job where you can die at any moment. I think that's what that was supposed to. That was her reason for
that's
getting
the
a
other
job.
thing is the non-committal nature of their relationship, where they were both kind of somewhat operating under the guise of, we're just here to support the child. Despite everything else and what everybody believes about us, we are doing our own thing. That was just her acting on her own. Obviously, that affected our main character, and that hit him really hard.
She does
when
have
went to
agency
Ginza.
still, yeah.
But yeah,
I was
no,
gonna say,
she's
yeah,
still her own independent person.
they also planted the seeds that both still viewed each other as family and had those feelings for each other. There's a reason after Shikishima gets
He has
upset at
his big
the way
breakdown.
his colleagues, he gets upset at the way his colleagues, are telling him to embrace the family he's found, and he doesn't want that. There's a reason there's a lingering shot of Noriko sadly continuing to prep dinner,
Yeah, absolutely.
That's there to be a reflective moment of like, well, she obviously doesn't think that way, and then you can see in his reaction when she has her office wear and is like, I'm going to stand on my own 2 feet. He's in a similar boat. Yeah, he's in a similar boat. He just doesn't have the right. He's not in the right headspace to. He's not in the right space to actually, divulge that.
I mean, let's face it. His PTSD was overwhelming his entire existence.
When Doc takes the photo of Noriko, my brain immediately went, "She's dead. There is no way that's not going to come back."
Death flag.
Yeah.
That is a death flag. She may as well have just pulled out her birth certificate and said, "Noriko, I'm gonna die."
I will say,
Well,
since we're already in spoiler zone, I think it is actually refreshing that the plot twist is that she's not dead. Because, like in any other thing, because it's a way of rewarding Shikishima for not going through with the kamikaze.
Yeah.
He gets to have his whole family again.
It's catharsis.
Yes.
It's catharsis for the themes all finally coming together.
Like,
And
I can easily see
God,
someone
the
going,
first viewing
like,
I had,
yeah.
you
Sorry, I
you
keep
unearthed
doing,
an
I keep
annoyance that I
doing
had
that.
on the first viewing.
Go ahead.
No, because they revealed she's alive, and I heard someone a few rows back like groan, like that was a cop out.
Okay, so
I can-
honestly,
And shot them.
Like, immediately,
so honestly,
my
Yeah,
immediate
of
I was tempted
course.
to do the same.
my
initially.
knee-jerk reaction was also but then like I thought about it for 5 seconds and it's like, oh, this is a sweet, actually, this is nice. It's nice that the film is
This
giving
is
him
this is sweet. His
after
his
the
war
unending trauma that he's gone
is
through.
over.
When she was reading the telegram, I was like, who the sent that telegram? Because I completely didn't expect her to be alive. And then when she
Yeah.
started like hitting him like repeatedly with it, I was like, there's no way they're going to do what I think they're going to do. And when they actually show that she was still alive, I didn't have your bitter, jaded reaction. I went,
Wow. I said I liked it.
No, hey, I'm
Way to
gonna
throw me under the bus, Travis. Touchdown.
Yeah, it would have just been depressing. He comes home to he comes home to a partially orphaned or like a double orphaned child, and a neighbor that probably hates him for trying to throw his life away again,
exactly.
or is going to be bitter.
So, but you know what? I was so appreciative of the scene where she meets him at the dock, and she's just punching him in the chest. It's like, you are
Yeah.
a
Like, you
fucking
stupid
moron.
idiot.
Like,
You
how,
are a
how could you
fucking idiot.
do that? You know,
Also, by
you
the
almost
way,
threw
this
away your
showed
life
up.
for nothing.
You are a complete piece of trash.
If he had waited 5 minutes at his house before leaving, he would have gotten that telegram. I think that's the
Exactly.
fun
No,
part.
there was time passed because he left his house and fully readied up and deployed.
He left like in the mid morning, and then
Yeah,
like
no,
it
because
was-
remember-
Yeah,
Yeah, because he left the note with the daughter, with Akiko.
And that was like,
And-
Yeah, he left in the middle of the
after,
night.
Wasn't that after the mechanic told him, okay, so this is the thing you pull for the bomb the bomb safety, and also
Yeah, it was afterwards because he got that.
so he was
briefing,
still in that like, I
once he
don't
got
know if
to
I'm
the
gonna kill
plane.
or not. That was, he was still
Yeah.
in that.
No. When he got to the plane, he was in the mode that I will die today.
Yeah. So,
So,
that was still
yeah,
a tangible piece of tension throughout the climax, but
Yeah.
Exactly.
we still, there's that thought in the back of your mind, but
that's why the pin drop works so well for me.
yeah,
right.
it's like,
Because
and I think the movie-
well, because it comes back in and he's charging in and like everyone's going, no, what are you doing? And I was like, I had the same thoughts in my head. I'm like, what are you f***ing doing, man?
during my first viewing,
do it.
during my first viewing, I was so worried that like the message of the movie would be like, you need to sacrifice yourself to avenge the deaths of others. But going through it again
Yeah.
on that
Golden.
second rewatch, it's more obvious. It's more obvious now.
No,
with
Golden.
all the lines that
No, that was
sprinkle
intentional.
throughout.
Like, hold on, Gordon. You were worried they were gonna Planet of Monsters you. Where they say
I've
the
been
moral of
conditioned
the
to
where
it.
they say the
I have
moral
been
of the story is
conditioned to it. This is a perfect segment.
no,
This is
no,
a
I
perfect
get
segue.
it. I fully get
This
it.
is a perfect segue
Yeah,
because
perfect segue.
in the Planet Eater and a 2019 monster movie that features Godzilla, that in that movie in particular, a character sacrifice is necessary. It is a cog in the plot to get Godzilla juiced. That's even something in the 1954 film. Serizawa needs to end his life
glad that-
because he's worried.
Glad that hypothetical
because-
one didn't come out.
1954.
Yes.
Serizawa has to take his own life because he believes that if he's left alive, the governments of the world would try to get the secrets of the oxygen destroyer out of him. Planet Eater is like so nihilistic about the human condition that the only way for it to end is if the main character of spoilers, who cares? So it's nice seeing a movie where it's like, no, you don't actually have to sacrifice yourself if you don't have
Yeah.
to. That's nice, you know?
And it's
After
unfortunately-
there's so many
it's-
entries where it's like, oh, that's depressing.
I was gonna say it's very unfortunate that like 54 is the only movie where there is that kind of self-sacrifice and it feels
Where it kind of makes
warranted
sense.
and
Yeah.
like serving of the themes and allegory of the movie, whereas like the Planet Eater just says, well, Godzilla can come back, so maybe just now. This is a movie with such an unapologetically like dedicated, optimistic lesson or moral, which is all just one word. It's just live.
Live.
And it's so
Yeah.
fucking refreshing. Despite how dreary this movie starts, I come out of this movie, I've experienced the whole spectrum of emotions, and I feel so goddamn happy because it does the catharsis of the ending so fucking well.
You heard it here first, folks. Nihilism. Live your life to the best.
Exactly.
That's right.
No,
And
wait,
and
honestly,
there's a
this-
whole speech
it-
about that before the final
Yeah.
operation, about how the Japanese the
government
Japanese
doesn't-
government the
doesn't care much for life.
they treat life way too cheaply. They talk about badly armored tanks, lack of ejector seats, pilots as like an official thing.
I know I know that comes from a lot of like the samurai way and what we know about like seppuku and stuff along those lines. But in addition to directly addressing the animosity that
fuck.
We ruined it. We ruined it.
No.
It's over.
No, I accidentally hit it. Damn it. I'm sorry.
No. I can resume this thought.
Immersion
I'm
is
heated.
broken. That's right.
Oh my god. That fucking thing is.
I'm morbing.
Nothing
anyways,
happened.
nothing
What
happened.
the fuck are you? What
Nothing
the fuck are you?
What?
Huh?
Moe.
Okay, so anyway, so while we're in a temporary pause in recording, is there any other key points that you guys want to address? Because I've covered everything. that I
Let me
wanted
look
to
at my
talk about.
notes. I like Godzilla. He's cool.
I like how
Cool.
big Godzilla spikes are. I think big spikes are cool.
I like how they extrude from him.
I like how they seem to get bigger every time he's on screen, like the sheriff's hat from
Like
Scary
the
Movie 3.
sheriff's hat from Scary Movie 3.
Please tell me that got recorded.
Yeah.
Yes, that's going.
Oh yeah,
on.
we're still recording. It's fine. Yeah.
So
Well, we didn't actually pause recording. We're just kind of in a lull.
I guess we can go to our concluding thoughts now.
Well, let's see if Golden has anything he wants to touch on.
I think I'm good. Well, I mean, I did mention the budget earlier. I did actually do a little bit of.
Yeah, you did mention the budget. We should talk about that a little bit. Yes.
What's the actual budget? Because I've just been hearing 15 million.
Okay, so I actually did a little bit of research into this topic because the cited budget on Wikipedia is citing a Variety article, and this Variety article doesn't say where they got it. I assume that is a thing that Toho would give out. But like just for shits and giggles, I did some digging. The animation studio that did a lot of the VFX for this film is called Shirogumi Studios. They do a lot of animated work, and in fact, they actually did Shin Godzilla as well. And I can't exactly find I found their LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And if that is true, then they have, I hope this isn't misinfo, but they have 29
Sure.
employees, and that is, I guess that is partially what keeps the budget down, because that is less people you have to pay. Also, Japanese labor laws are very weird and possibly morally bankrupt.
That's what the next movie should be about.
But what I want to say, what I want to say is, so I did a look at Shin Godzilla's budget, and according to comments from Hideaki Anno and some conversions that I did from a 2016 yen to what it would be now, it was made for 10 million yen, or 10 million US dollars by 2016.
Yeah, I remember it had a
standards.
lower budget.
And so comparing the scope of the work there with this movie, I think 15 million is a reasonable amount of money for the scope that is in this movie. That's just my opinion, though. I think it's entirely possible there is information that is not being given to us, but who knows?
Yeah.
I
You
also
actually did your research and stuff before putting up a video on YouTube of where we claim stuff of it that we know. That's real topical at the moment.
It's oh my god.
I'm here to throw a wrench in that. I think the movie's woke because there aren't any white people in it.
Hey, no, there's stock
Whoa.
footage. There's stock footage of MacArthur. Don't worry.
Oh my god.
Oh, okay.
You're right. You're right. It's not woke.
That's right.
There's no messages or there's no themes. It's just Godzilla fighting another invisible monster the entire time.
This movie's
fighting
woke because
Kong,
it says
that's why
nuclear
the
stuff
music
is
is there.
bad.
He's fighting Kong. That's why the music is there. It's a good interjection.
I will say I will say I'm
wrench into it. What?
Oh, look at this.
I will say I'm very glad they did bring back Mecha Serizawa. I was looking forward to his appearance in the movie,
Yeah, I'm glad they
and
brought him
he
back.
didn't disappoint.
Mecha Serizawa was a bold choice to go with.
It was a pretty bold choice.
How will this play into Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire?
Can't keep getting away
It's
with
a good
this.
thing that one got
So-
canceled.
I do have a quick bit before we transition into conclusions. So
Good for them.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
just pause for a second. All right, fellas. So now that I think we've talked about everything. What are our concluding thoughts? Golden, since you are our host, you go first.
I'm the host. It is possibly one of the most solidly made conventional Godzilla films ever. I think it does a lot of things really well. It's thrilling, it's exciting. You care about the human characters. Godzilla is genuinely a frightening character in this. The themes that it touches upon, while light, I think are something that. Do you mind? The themes that it touches upon, I think, are very relatable to a lot of people. So I think this will have a very broad appeal. Fucking good movie, really good. I liked it. I don't give scores to things, but I'd give it like an 8 out of 10 or some shit. Have a good night, everybody. The review's not over. Go ahead.
Yeah.
This is fuck his score. This is a 10 out of 10 movie for me.
He just doesn't like Godzilla.
You're not gonna find any Marvel quips in this movie, and that was like breathing oxygen for the first time. It was such a refreshing. It's you know what's a better metaphor? It's like having your first sip of like a crisp, ice cold Sprite after a hot day, and you're just like, that's refreshing.
This movie defied all my expectations. Like I said earlier, I was not. My expectations were already extremely high. For I would say about 75 to 80% of the movie, up until the pin drop scene, I was just.
Let him
I
Let him speak.
I know, but I misheard you. I thought you said it defiled your expectations, and I was like, what the?
Shit all
Okay,
over him.
let me
Go ahead.
start over.
Yeah, we need a clean take. Cut that.
This movie really did defy all my expectations. Going
What?
into this movie. Shut up.
Go ahead. Go.
I
Clean
didn't
take.
say anything.
You
Okay,
made a
okay.
noise. Okay. For real.
This movie defied my expectations. Like seriously, going in, I was riding on the high that was Shin Godzilla. I think Shin Godzilla is one of the best movies that I've ever seen, especially going into this as a complete amateur to the Godzilla franchise. And like I mentioned before, for the first 80 to 85% of the movie, up until that pin drop scene, I was just kind of just existing. I was enjoying the movie, but it wasn't doing much. And at the very end, when that scene hits, that's when everything really came crashing down on me. And I finally discovered what a masterpiece this movie actually was. It was so well executed. Was so invested in all of the little pieces with the characters, the PTSD, the kamikaze, the politics, the tech. I mean, everything just, it was perfect. This movie is easily a 10 out of 10 and probably in my top 5 movies of all time. It was that good.
I think it's suck. No, I'm doing the same bit. It's the same fucking bit.
So
We
what
only
did you
have like 2 jokes throughout
So-
this entire group.
So, Dicker T, what did you think of Godzilla Minus One?
It's my favorite Godzilla movie, bar none. After a third viewing, it stays solidly at the top. Like everyone said, it blew away all expectations I had. Like, for God's sake, Gareth Edwards and Hideaki Anno gave this movie high praise. Those are two of my favorite directors, so the expectations were already out of the water. Everything plays into itself, and there's so many multi-layered themes and allegories, and they all wrap together up in a nice bow, all in one moment at the exact same time, and it all works. It completely sticks to landing. It is a damn near perfect movie for me. One of my favorite movies of all time, like Simmons said. I recommend it if you like good movies.
Woo! Bravo, Yamazaki.
I have one more thing to say.
How was your
If you go see this movie, hold on. How's that for a magic trick?
Holy shit! Did you see that?
Put that away.
Fucking get this shit out of here.
Put that away.